watching this, I guess you've already bought something. I sure appreciate your business. My name's Wayne Ball. I work for Florian Tools, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to finally get a DVD out showing you how to adjust a maxi lopper. This is something we've been trying to do for a quarter of a century. I'm going to finally do it. First thing I want to talk about, though, is sharpening your tools. People tickle me. When I'm doing the shows, they go, "When do you sharpen them?" Back home, we do it when they get dull. You know, what people mean to ask me is, how long will it stay sharp? National average on our blades is 3 years old. I know it sounds like a long time, but hold on. You're not buying China. They're American made, commercial grade. And that's why the edge stays so good so long. But if you want to know if your lopper needs sharpening, take a 1-inch size limb, something small, put it in the back of the jaw as far as it'll go. When it touches, turn it loose. When you push on it, it's supposed to bite the limb and take it, not push it toward the end of the blade. If it pushes it up to the end of the blade, up against what I call the eagle beak, it's the anvil, but eagle beak everybody understands better. If it pushes the wood against the eagle beak, it'll still cut it, but it's not sharp as it should be. If the knife is grabbing like it should, then you got a pretty good edge. You can always thumb cock it, open it up, take your fingernail and drag it down the blade. If you can see light ricochet off the knife, you're looking at it, you want to tilt it. If you're like me, old man, you got to look over your glasses. But get down here where you can see it and look and see if you've got any light shining. If you see a light shine, you ought to hit the blade just a lick or two. We have two groups of customers. Customers that never sharpen them and the customers that sharpen them too much. The middle of the road's where you want to be. Touch it up occasionally. Like I said, every 3 years is average. Once a year should be plenty, even in commercial use. Now, as you sharpen your blade, over time, you're going to lose your knife. It's going to disappear. As we sharpen the knife down, we can move the hook to compensate for what you take off. That's the adjusting part. That's what we're going to talk about now. So, the tools you're going to need when you're going to adjust a lopper. You want a 6-sided socket. You want 2 5/32 Allen wrenches, 1 3/32. I prefer a T-handle. You can use a regular Allen wrench. When you're doing the sharpening that we just talked about, you want to use a mill bastard file if it's fairly dull or if you've got any nicks in the blade. Then you hone it with a diamond of your choice. The big deal about the diamonds is don't put pressure on them. Don't ride the diamond file. You'll mess your diamonds up. So, hit it with the file, dress it with the diamond. Okay, take your wrenches. First thing you're going to do, whether your lopper's out of adjustment, whether you've just sharpened it, whatever it is you want to do, take your, now I'm going to loosen each nut 2/4 turns. Take your 3/32 Allen wrench. You have a heat-treated screw through these 2 pins right here. And I'm going to back up the 2 screws. You kind of feel for them. You'll feel the wrench go in the screw. Back it up. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 4 half turns. You can do 5, you can do 6, but just back them up. Now, if you'll look right here, this is where the cameraman's going to edit this in close where you can see it. But we're going to show you this later. But this edge right here, I'm going to hit it with the wrench and it's going to knock it down flat. That knocked down because I backed the screws up before I struck it. Now when I thumb cock it, go from gear 10 to gear 1. When I shut it, I now have my blade parallel with the eagle beak. A lot of guys loan them to their brother-in-law. Okay, this is what you need when you start adjusting your lopper. 3/32 Allen wrench, 2 5/32 Allen wrenches, 3/8. 6-sided is my preference. Some people use a 12-point. 6-sided is much better. Diamond hones to polish the knife. File to get rid of any burrs if you've accidentally hit trellis wire or something to overly dull your blade. So you're going to use a file to dress the blade, diamonds to hone it after you've done the dressing on the nicks. Red Loctite, this is to put in the axle of the big lopper if you're changing out a new blade. screwdriver I use to push the E-clips off if I'm actually disassembling the lopper, and then a chainsaw file is to adjust the ratchet teeth and all in a blade replacement situation, which we're not going to do that. Okay folks, one of the major things I need to go over right now is if your lopper's adjusted properly, whenever you thumb cock it, artificially engage your ratchet, as you close the tool, it's going to go from gear 10 to gear 1, all on its own. But as you close that mouth down, this should line up with no crack under it. If your lopper ever gets out of adjustment, whenever you're trying to pull it open, it's going to have it won't have the little pop or the release that you just saw. It'll actually have a gap under the blade as you close it, and then whenever you pull it open, it just swings open. It doesn't have this locking thing that holds the lopper in place. That's the way it should be. The key in adjusting is adjusting the top screw to the proper setting to make that lock not be too strong or too light. Previously we talked about blade bounce. So now what we're going to do, what we're talking about is you're going to take your 3/8 socket, you loosen the nuts. The nuts, say a 1/4 turn a piece or a 1/2 round's what it boils down to. 3/32 Allen wrench. You have a pin, a screw going through each one of these pins. So what you're going to do once you've loosened the nuts, you're going to go to your top screw and you're going to back up this screw, say 4 1/2 turns. 1, 2, 3, 4. You're going to come to the next screw that's in the second pin and you're going to back it up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Once you've loosened these 2 screws and backed them up, you can now tap the end of the, I call it the eagle beak. It makes it so much easier for people to understand. Technically it's an anvil, but as you knock it back, this gap or that it's sticking out here, that's all going to go back down level. Now we start over again on the adjustment once you've got it back to that position. You always do your adjusting with the top screw only. Okay folks, I've been told that whenever I tell you I thumb cock the lopper, people don't really understand what I'm doing. Whenever you put a limb inside the head, as you close it shut, the limb itself puts pressure on the knife, and that pressure on the knife is what the tool senses, which makes this hook here disengage, the pressure. When I thumb cock, I'm on the opposite side of the anvil, and as I push with my thumb, I put pressure and it lets this hook disengage. And then it's going to go into whatever gear it would be if it had a limb in it. We're artificially engaging or thumb cocking, which lets the hook, as I thumb cock it, I'm pushing pressure right here. And then this hook disengages, which lets your ratchet arm go free. That's what we mean by the term thumb cocking. A lot of guys loan to their brother-in-law. Don't loan it to your brother-in-law, okay? The big deal there is when people loan them to their brother-in-law, he's out there cranking on the ratchet. He knows to pump it, but he don't know how to pump it. We'll go over that in a minute. The point I'm making, though, is he's going to stroke it too long. It's going to back up. It's a safety release. He gets frustrated. He's twisting and yanking on your lopper. If you look at your lopper and you're looking down the blade, and the blade is not running in the center, it's been torqued. When you loosen these 2 nuts, like I just done, and you tap it back, a lot of times the head of the lopper, when you tap it, it'll shift. And when it shifts, what you see is an offset, and the blade will actually straighten back up on its own. All right, now, we've got it parallel, and we got it straight. Go to the top screw. Start turning. When you turn this screw, you're going to feel the handle swell in your hands. As you turn it down, you're going to feel this growing. I can feel the eagle beak moving forward. As this is growing and I feel some pressure, I'm going to stop. I'm going to pull it open. That's plenty tight. I'm going to back that up just a hair because I wanted to actually show you the process of going a little bit more as we go. So let's do this again. I backed it up. Right now, it's holding, but I can hit it and it'll flop open, okay? So what I'm feeling for is called blade bounce. I want the blade to strike the face of the anvil. I want to feel the blade hit. Put your hands down on the bottom of the handles. Don't choke up on the ball back. Bounce the blade. But see, it locked. The hook dropped right there. It ain't quite tight enough. I don't have quite enough blade bounce. But it's starting to catch. So I'm going to now barely turn that screw. Not even a fourth of a turn. When you get to this stage, you've got to move the screw in frog hairs. Okay? It don't take much. So, that's still not enough. I'm going to take it again. This is the final step. Now, that's getting to where I could leave it. Now watch the bounce on the blade. As I hit it, I can feel the blade hitting before this hook drops. Let me do it one more time. Here's the hook. Now I'm going to try to close it, but not let the hook catch. Close, close. If you look at the knife is closing. Look at the crack out under the blade. It shuts. I feel the blade hitting, but it's not, the hook is not dropping. I'm going to close it, let it drop. Now I'm going to pull on it. Feel what resistance I have. I could leave it there, especially for a lady, but I'm going to take it just a little bit more. Now, that's getting to where I would have it on a setting at a show where I don't want a 12-year-old boy to come up from my back turning him open when I don't want him to. So here again, blade bounce. Thumb cock it, you have to thumb cock it. This is the mistake that people make when they're trying to do it over the phone, when I'm talking to them. Okay, shut. After you've made the thumb cock, let the hook drop. Okay, now I've got plenty of pressure on that to where it won't swing open. I pull on it, it don't take a lot. I can pull it open with 2 fingers. But that's what I'm feeling for. Now when I get it down to that point, I can actually go back on the sharpening and dress it. And as I take a little bit off of the dressing on the sharpening, and we're talking 2/1000ths of an inch, half a human hair, I can still turn that screw another frog hair to readjust it right before I lock it down. Now it's sharp. I'm satisfied. So you come in on the screws. As you turn in the nut, this is where your 5/32 Allen wrench comes in. And you got to hold the screw in order to get the tightening. Tighten her down pretty good. Do not use generic screws. If you see, I've tightened that enough, see how that wrench don't want to come out? If that's got a little too tight, if you can't get it out, back the screw up 1/8 of a turn and then retighten it again. But as you tighten the nut down, you're actually closing the Allen wrench hole over the end of the wrench. So that's telling you that you're getting her torque down there pretty good. So don't want to go too far. You should be able to prise it a little bit and get it to pop out. Once you've got the wrench out, if you want to come in again and hit it one more final tap, you've got your nuts torqued down. Now we're going to go in. This is the important step everybody leaves out. Top screw. Remember, we used the top screw to do the adjusting. We haven't used the bottom one yet. Torque that top screw in place. It's like tightening a tire lug nut. Okay? You don't just take it to 100 pounds and tighten the tire. You torque it to 120 or thereabouts. So now you're taking these 2 screws. I don't know how much I'm turning them as far as the torque, but I can feel the Allen wrench torque a little bit in my hand. And as I'm tightening these screws, they're being over tightened just a little. That'll make them stay in place when I'm cutting. Now, now that I've done that, look face on at your knife and look and see if it's straight down the center. If you have the knife where it's favoring left or right, you can put the head of the lopper in a vise. Don't mash the jaw on it. Leave a gap in the jaw of the vise. Slide it in. If I pull on this red handle to me, it's going to torque the blade to the right. If I push it from me, it's going to torque it to the left. Now, if you do the mirror image and have it this way, then those instructions will be just the opposite. So you're moving the orange handle down in the vise, but pushing or pulling is going to move the blade left or right depending on which way you load it in the vise. If you're in the woods, you can always take a small stick, put it in the vise. Notice I've got the green handle down like on the tailgate of my pickup truck. You reach out here like this, and I'm going to try to do it pointed toward the camera, make it easier. We'll have the tight shots for you to look at in a minute. But as I torque this, I can torque that blade over to the left or the right, and I can bounce it a little bit. Whenever I do that adjustment, I look at it, is it down the middle? If it's down the center, I don't have no crack underneath my knife. I've got my adjustment right. Now you're ready to cut something. That's the way it's supposed to work. Okay, now here's the close-up on your eagle beak or the amble. Notice how much of the amble is sticking over right here. Now, what I've already loosened the nuts, I'm going to back up the two adjustment screws, back them up a couple rounds apiece, back it up. This is just like we showed you a minute ago, but this is a close-up to help you see it. Okay, now when I open it, look at the difference right here at the eagle beak. Now whenever I tap this over, watch this drop. Watch it make it level. Now the eagle beak, all this is level with the frame of the lopper. That's the step that we wanted to show you. That's where you start when you thumb cock, and then now you start with the top screw and you turn it and let it grow as you feel the eagle beak readjusting. That's your close-up. The second close-up is to look at the face of the eagle beak and notice that the blade is down the center of the right and left side. It's not cocking left or right. Okay? All right, now here's the close-up on tweaking the blade. If you set the lopper like on the tailgate of your pickup truck or the stump of a tree or something, put it in the jaw, out on the tip of the blade. But now, when I tweak it, I'm going to do it in front of the camera so you can see. When I torque it, I'm torquing the blade to the left side, or I can torque the blade to the right side. Now, neither one of these is enough to actually take it one way or the other. If I really want it to go, I'll put my elbow against the stick. Now, I'm left-handed, so you'll have to translate this for right-handed people. But I'm pushing with my left hand on the orange handle. The blade's up, and I'm tweaking it. I can yank that thing over there and get it 3/8 of an inch off center. Look at the gap right here at my thumb. See how I've torqued that off? The blade, you're not going to bend. The blade is hard. It's got an RC Rockwell scale of 57 on a scale of 100. The point, though, is you're not going to bend the blade. You're actually torquing or taking the bend out of the chassis frame of the lopper when your brother-in-law was out there pumping. A while ago I told you he don't know how to pump it. This is what your brother-in-law didn't know how to do. He knows to ratchet. Ratchet, ratchet, everything's working just fine until he goes too far. It's made to release. It's a safety release. And so your brother-in-law sitting here flopping his arms. We call it the funky chicken. He don't know what he's doing. He's backing it up, and he can't catch that last gear. That's the reason he'll torque your lopper, and when it comes back, not down the middle. All he had to do was do it right. But he's a brother-in-law, so anyway. One thing I did leave out, I want to put back in to remind everybody. Whenever I was talking about the blades being off center and tweaking things, I have a problem with people that use a lopper 2, 3, 4, 5 years, they've never done nothing to it. And the first thing you should always check is whether your blade is tight. I have people that bring them to me and the axle screws have backed up. So, if your lopper's got any kind of blade-to-blade slap, wiggle, That's what your 2 Allen wrenches are for. You take the 2 Allen wrenches, one on each side of the axle, back out the one loose screw. One screw's going to loosen before the other. They're put in with Loctite. Take out the one that comes out, clean the threads the best you can, use red Loctite, just a drop or 2, and run it down. Run the 2 screws together as far as they'll go. Torque them down hard. Whenever you get them torqued down hard, it should move freely, but no flop. If it's a hair tight, and I mean just 1,000th or 2, when you squeeze, it'll actually click and put pressure on the blade and you don't want it to. That means it's just a hair snug. Back that screw up 1/8 of a turn. Move it again. Back it up another 1/8 of a turn and move it again. The minute you can move it, open and close, without it actually clicking and going in gear, then let it set up overnight and let the red Loctite fasten that axle down right there. Okay? All right, now we're going to talk briefly on sharpening alone. We've done the adjusting, talk, and all that. We're going to talk about sharpening. First thing I want you to do, open your lopper up, thumb cock it, where you can get it wide open, and take your fingernail, if nothing else, and just drag it down the edge. And you're feeling for any chips, pits, bad places. It's like if you have a chip in your tooth. You feel like you can drive a 2x4 through it, and you get home and look in the mirror, you can't even see it. But you can feel it with your tongue. Here you can feel bad places with your fingernail. Same technique. Now what you're going to do, anytime you have a rough place, you always file it first. Use a flat mill bastard file. These blades are hardened, okay? The tempering on them is around a 58. A mill bastard file is around 62. You got to have practically a new file. If your file's got any age on it much, it's going to slide on these blades. They're too hard. So get you a brand new file. I prefer a 6-inch file. This, I believe, is an 8-inch. Lay the lopper down. I'll demonstrate it here in another sequence where I'm going to move. I don't want to move out of the view of the camera. But we're going to lay the lopper down on the table, and you use the left side, right side. Count your strokes on both sides. I'll do this here in a minute. But then after you've touched it up with the file, all you do is touch up each edge. The knife in this lopper is 2-sided. So you got to do left side, right side equally. Okay? Then you hone it with your choice of a diamond hone. You do what you want to. You can use a stone in a big lopper because you can get it open. When it comes to the little hand pruners and stuff, the diamond hone is much more necessary because of it being sloped. You want this sloped edge where it'll get into a tight spot. Okay? But you're honing with diamond after you've already done the filing. Then you would, after you've sharpened it, then you would go back to what we covered previously on adjusting. Loosen your nuts, use your wrench on your top screw, readjust the hook to compensate for what you sharpened off. Key is you want to feel that blade bounce. Feel the bounce, making contact with the anvil, but don't let the hook drop. Feel that blade hitting. You can feel it making contact. Right now I've got this set a little bit tight. You can see that when I pull it, I'm having to pull a little bit. You should be able to hear that make a pop. Right there. That is a little bit on the strong side. Set it anywhere in there where you want it. Y'all would want it to feel some blade bounce, so when I shut it, it should hold itself closed. That's the main thing you're looking for. Then once you've tightened it up, don't forget to take your 3/32 Allen wrench and go back in and torque these set screws. The very screws that you've done your adjusting with, you've got to torque them beyond where you actually took them to. Once you've tightened your nuts up, the nuts are not going to let you move the anvil. You're now torquing these set screws. Then look at the face of the lopper. This may be duplicated, but it serves a purpose to say it twice. Check and see that the blade is down the center of the anvil, as far as it being right or left. Take you a small piece of wood, something modest in size, not too big, not too small. Set it in there straight, and if you can ratchet through that, and when you get it ratcheting, cameraman, can you see that right there? You want it to be straight. You want the blade to be coming down the center. If you see your blade moving right or left, then you need to sharpen the outside side. If it's moving to the right, we need to sharpen the right side harder. Moving to the left, just the opposite, the left side harder. That's assuming that the blade is down the center of the anvil after you've done the adjusting. Refer to what I've said before about adjusting. But then when you make your cut, it's supposed to make a real clean, pretty cut, and the blade's still tracking down the middle. That's what we're looking for.
Okay.
All right, one thing that might help you guys when you're starting out, take a permanent magic marker and mark the ground edge of what we done at Florian Tools when we built the tool. You mark that edge. Now, it's kind of like using layout ink in the steel industry. If you've got a chip or something from wire, you'd use your flat file first, then do the ink. Once you've got your blade fairly straightened up, diamond hone, and what I'm doing is I'm taking the diamond and taking the ink off. And that ink shows me that I'm doing exactly what I need to do. Now I'm going to come out of camera for a minute and keep talking. I'm going to lay it back down. That's one side. We've got to flip it over. Now you're doing the opposite side of the same blade. And I didn't ink this one, but now you're going to do that same side. Back in the back, all the way up in the front. I'm going backwards and forwards at the same time, because the diamond cuts in two directions. A file cuts only moving forward. So when you see me stroking the diamond backwards and forwards, it's because it cuts two ways. And now your blade's been honed. You're done, we're ready to go use that thing. But don't loan it to your brother-in-law.